up a very successful life sciences business. Please give a big hand to Onno van der Stolpe.
Thank you. It's a big honor to be here in Leiden, the home turf of Galapagos. Here we started 80 years ago with 3 people, and we built out Galapagos to what it is today with almost 500 people. And it's a great story that I want to share with you, and it's nice to share that in Leiden. This slide illustrates basically what Galapagos does. We identify proteins that are responsible for specific diseases, and then we use those to find molecules that interact with the protein and that we can develop as drugs. So simple, so straightforward. That's how we set out the strategy when we started, and that's how we executed it over those 18 years. But there are issues. These are the issues. It takes too long, it has a high chance of failure, and it costs way too much. And that makes this whole industry almost impossible to finance and to operate. And all of you have the same issues that Galapagos has faced over the years. And I have some illustrations here. First, the chance of success, and it's really small. This is an attrition rate that we came up with at the beginning when we had these novel targets and decided that we need to at least have 12 targets to start with to have a reasonable chance to get one product into phase 3. And after all these years, we think that this is a reasonable attrition percentage. Less than 10% of the projects that you start with in chemistry will actually yield you a molecule that can go to phase 3. Nothing wrong with it, but it's difficult to sell to investors when you start your first discussions. And then if you talk about the value creation, it's even more difficult. You have to get it all the way into proof of concept in man, not in animals, in man, before you can really create any value of your project. When it's preclinical or even in phase 1, pharma will pay almost nothing for getting access to your program. It's only after the proof of concept that they see what the true value is, and that's when the competition heats up and they will go for the big numbers. Which means that you have to organize your company in a way that you can actually keep your molecule all the way till phase 2, which is not easy. And then, of course, the cost. It's mind-boggling what the cost of drug development is these days. This graph is, I think, still underestimating what the costs these days are if you add all the failures on top of the few molecules that actually make it to the market. And if Filgotinib gets to the market by Gilead, Gilead will have paid by then at least $1.5 billion already on getting that drug to what it is at that point in time. And that excludes all the failures that also Gilead has many of. So it is extremely expensive, and the problem, of course, is how you then going to build a business case around it, how you got to get investors to be interested in it. And that's what we have been struggling with from the beginning at Galapagos, to actually do what we wanted to do with all these targets and making drugs, and at the same time finance the whole business activities. And we have done a whole range of activities, including, where do we have the point? There. A whole range of activities to finance this. And we were able to move a number of programs forward, and this is how it looked like in 2005 when we went public on Euronext. We had a whole range of targets. The first few targets were moving into drug discovery, so money was becoming, the need for money was becoming more and more. And the problem was that we were still very early, but had a long way to go. We were able to sell this to the investors, so we actually got it. We got the listing done on Euronext, which was a great moment. But the only way we did it was by selling to the investors a business model that they liked, and that was a combination of fee-for-service activities that we did for biotech companies and pharma companies, the partnerships, the alliances that we signed, and then with the idea to ultimately have a product of our own. And that combination made Galapagos to what it is today. We sold the whole service division a couple of years back to Charles River, made a lot of money for it. The alliances I'll talk about were also a very successful part of the company, and ultimately our own products will drive the real value. The partnerships was, I think, a great move forward for Galapagos, where we said, okay, pharma is completely inadequate in getting targets to drugs, but they are interested in new mode of actions when you show that you have proof of concept. So why don't we do that whole early part for them, where we have the target, get the molecule, do the phase 1 and maybe even the phase 2, and then the partner can do the rest, pays us milestones along the way and royalties at the end. That concept worked well. We were able to sign on a lot of these alliances, and they brought in serious amounts of money. We have had more than $450 million from these partners over the years. So it's really a way to finance the growth of your company, to grow the programs forward with very impressive names as partnerships, exciting programs, both parties very excited, but in the end, everything completely blew up. All these partnerships ended because pharma changed their strategy. They were acquired, management changed, the whole teams got fired when the sites closed. So in the end, we ended up with no partnerships on the original ones. But the good thing was that we had negotiated that if a partnership would blow up, that all the rights would revert back to Galapagos. And so we ended up with all these molecules that we were developing in these partnerships, and that has really been the basis of the success of the company. So let me switch now to the second part of what made Galapagos great, and that is really the evolution to a product company. And ultimately, that's what all of you should do as well. In the end, there's only one way to create true value, and that is bringing your own products at least into phase 2, but preferably even to the market. Filgotinib is a fantastic molecule. It's safe and effective, and we think it's going to be a very large product for all inflammatory diseases. But the path forward was not straightforward. Initially, we had discovered this target with our technology platform for osteoarthritis. We put it in an alliance with Glaxo. Glaxo changed their view on osteoarthritis and wanted it in rheumatoid arthritis. We said, okay, we'll move it forward into RA. But then just before we were taking the molecule into phase 1, they got cold feet and said, well, we're not happy that you take it into the clinic. So we said, well, the only way out is you pay us the milestone and we take it into the clinic, and you have to give the rights back to us. This is actually what they did. They paid us $5 million and signed away all the rights to the molecule. And we started the phase 1 in August 2010. Major step for us. We needed the success of this molecule because we had some failures before. And since then, this molecule has behaved absolutely fantastic in pretty much every step along the way. This was the first data set that we published. Very small study, 36 patients in Moldova. And it showed fantastic responses in ACR, which is a scoring level of response in these rheumatoid arthritis patients. But maybe easiest to see is this CRP, which is C-reactive protein. You see within 7 days, almost the inflammatory protein has disappeared from the bloodstream. So fantastic data. We got a lot of interest from pharma companies based on this data, and we signed a deal with Abbott, which of course was a very strong player at the time already, with Humira as the largest selling drug for inflammatory diseases in the world. And they seem to be a very good partner because Humira was supposed to go off patent in 2016. A great step. They wanted a very large phase 2 studies and they paid for it. The deal was very well published, very well received by the market. Stock went up. Finally, we broke out of the 5 to 10 euro a share, and we started to do the famous Darwin studies. Very large studies, about 900 patients, treating for half a year with the drug, which was very expensive. It cost us over $100 million to do this study. Abbott had paid us 170, so it was fine to execute. But it also shows you that in a disease like this, it's almost impossible to move forward without a pharma partner, because we would never have been able to raise on the capital markets this kind of money for a product that was still so immature in its development state. The Darwin studies came out with superb results, both on the safety as well as the efficacy. Here you see the ACR 50 score, which is a very high bar that the patients have to improve by 50%. And you see that 50% of the patients actually get that level or more, which was the highest number ever published for any drug in rheumatoid arthritis. So very, very impressive data, very consistent, and basically a free path forward to take this into phase 3. Well, clearly the stock reacted, the price shot up on this data set, and we decided to make the big jump, so go to the Nasdaq. We had been asked to go to the Nasdaq for years. I always said, well, the time is not there, the company is too small, we'll get the exposure that we need in the US, but with this JAK inhibitor, that's the basis of Filgotinib, that target is very hot in the US, there's a lot of competition there, but also our other program is cystic fibrosis. Vertex is the big company there. So Galapagos got more and more exposure already in the US, so we decided it was time to go to the Nasdaq. And so in May last year we listed the company very successfully. We raised $310 million, the largest biotech IPO in the US over the last 10 years, so quite an accomplishment. Stock went up during those days that we were on the roadshow. That's an ideal situation. So we upped from 100 to 300 million the offering at the time. And this was the day we got listed on the Nasdaq, and we could actually open up the floor, and then on Times Square you got this big billboard with Galapagos on there, so really cool moment. Also the whole roadshow is a lot of fun because you fly around in a jet. After the 5 days it's parked again, you never see it back, but for the 5 days you feel really like a president candidate. So it was cool, but then back to business, and the rest of the year, as most of you will know, was quite hectic. Our friends from AbbVie decided to not take the option on Filgotinib. There were a lot of reasons for it. I think they completely fucked up by not taking the option, but that's their choice. You see the stock had a serious drop. Investors panicked because they said, well, if AbbVie doesn't take the license, there's probably something really, really wrong with the molecule. We had always said that we wanted the license back because we didn't think AbbVie was the right partner at that point in time. And we had initiated discussions with other parties already, and the rest is history. We signed the deal with Gilead, the second largest end of phase 2 deal in the history, so also a very big accomplishment. They paid us $725 million. Gilead is an incredible partner. They are one of the best pharma partners, I guess, that you can get. But also the terms are quite impressive. The license fee, the royalties, the milestones, royalties starting at 20%. But most important for Galapagos was that we negotiated commercial rights. And this is the next stage for the company. We have moved from a biology to chemistry to development, and now we're going to go into commercial. So in Europe, we have co-promotion rights. So we build up the next phase where we're actually going to market together with Gilead Filgotinib to the patients. In those areas, we split it 50-50. So a very interesting step for us. We can build the infrastructure on the success of Filgotinib, and will be the next phase of the company. Of course, also the concern that many have raised, well, they don't see it as a concern. I see it as a concern. They see it as an opportunity that Galapagos will actually be acquired by Gilead. That with this kind of terms is, of course, there's a chance. Something that we really don't want. We think Galapagos is an opportunity to further grow out into a fully integrated biotech company with a whole pipeline full of interesting molecules. So we'll do everything possible to not end up as a subsidiary of Gilead. We're clearly one of the role models now in the industry here, definitely in the Benelux, but also in Europe. We are very visible, as I said, in the US with our pipeline, and I think, I hope that more companies here in the Benelux will follow in our path and actually have the ambition to really drive forward into a real large integrated pharma company, and don't sell out to partners too easily. We're clearly in a different league financially. The stock price has gone up with the Gilead investment. We are in a different situation now than we've ever been. We have $1 billion in the bank, which is mind-boggling, and we're getting much more milestones in the future, so we clearly don't need all the cash that we have in the company at the moment, which is good. So we can actually make the right decisions for our program without having to think about the financial consequences. We can still partner if the partner brings in expertise or marketing power or whatever, but we don't have to do it anymore because we cannot make the next step ourselves. And that is, I think, ultimately in the interest of the programs and of the shareholders in the company. So if you look at the path that Filgotinib has gone through, you see that there's a lot of very decisive moments in its development where it could have gone wrong or where the data were crucial for the next phase. It's a long path with a lot of hurdles. Every drug goes through it. There's no clear path of any drugs on the market. And so don't get too put down if something goes wrong in a trial or in a development or with a partner. There's always a way forward. Well, not always, but often a way forward that you might not see on the first day that the bad news hit. We're very convinced that Filgotinib will hit the market in 2019, not only for RA, but also for Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, and many other diseases. This is a blockbuster in development, and we have the luck that we have one very good molecule that is safe and effective. And that's ultimately what this is about. You can build the whole company on one molecule. Look at Genmab, look at us. You only need one molecule to get there. And that's what we have done, and that's what you should do as well. So the lessons learned in those 18 years that I've been at the helm of Galapagos, clearly the margin between success and failure is very, very thin. It could have gone completely wrong with Galapagos as well. There are many moments in time that they said, well, you know, if it had gone the other way, that would have been the end, or at least it would have been a marginal future for the company. But don't let yourself be bogged down by it. There's always a way forward. Always think about a couple of steps ahead with regard to your financing options. There are lots of examples of companies that didn't do that were caught by surprise, and then had to dilute too much to remain in existence. Financing is crucial for the success of any biotech company, and you cannot think enough about that part. Retain the rights, very important. We are the example of a company that has grown thanks to the rights that we had in these alliances, that all the molecules came back to Galapagos. And be an optimist. Clearly every CEO has to be an optimist, but definitely in this space, because there's too much failure along the way. And hold on to your goal. A lesson that I give to a lot of young entrepreneurs. There are lots of people around you, advisors, venture capitalists. They all think they know it better, but they don't. You have to set out your path where you want to go with your product, with your platform, with your expertise, and just go for it. Don't let yourself being taken off the path by other people that are not entrepreneurs, because if they knew it better, they would be entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Really good, Rob. What an amazing and exciting story this is, and it's unbelievable actually, and I'm so happy to have been able to hear it all again. I'm sure there are lots of questions. Anyone who has a question, can you please stand up and mention your name as well? I can't believe there are no questions, otherwise I have plenty. Shall we go? All right. So I think your tips are really, really useful. I mean, hearing the story, it's like there's so many times you could have given up, right?
Yeah.
You say you were lucky to have a good molecule, but tell us a little bit about the time. Was there the time that you thought, well, this is just not going to work? What stage of the company was that?
Well, I think the most critical moment was actually the IPO on Euronext, when I had been on the roadshow for a week, came back from Italy, and the banks told me that the book was not filled. So we had less in the book than we wanted to raise, and so complete failure of an IPO roadshow. it was a bad week for the markets, and in the evening both banks, KBC and Kempen, advised us to pull the offering. And in biotech, that's a kiss of death. There's no second chance. And so rather than pulling the offering, we decided to lower, of course, the price, which was an easy decision, but also to go back to our venture capital shareholders that up to that moment had not been part of the offering. But they knew, of course, that if the IPO would not go through, they had to finance anyway. So we put the next day, we put them under pressure, and they came up with, I think, 8 million of the 22 million that we ultimately raised. So the day after, we were able to fill the book, even oversubscribe it, and we could continue. But that was if it had not happened, probably likely we would have become part of Crucell again, which was the founding father, and that would be the end of the story.
Yeah, that's amazing how the tides can turn. I do remember actually, this is a long time ago, you told me even when you bought a couple of companies, you know, and one was listed on the AIM, the junior market of the London Stock Exchange.
Focus.
And again, obviously the bankers hadn't properly done their job, and you started calling up all the individual shareholders.
We have lots of good war stories. This is one in England on AIM. All the shareholders are actually registered, so you got the phone numbers and their addresses, but you're not, when you do an offer, you cannot solicit. You cannot say, well, you should go and take this offer. We were giving Galapagos shares as an exchange to these biofocus shares. But you can, of course, make people aware that the offer is there. And so we said, well, we're going to call all these shareholders because we wanted to offer to get as many shares in as possible. To let it go through, and the lawyers got completely berserk. They said, you know, they end up in prison and this and that. And we said, well, we're going to go ahead anyway. So we divided up that list through the management team. There's also secretaries. Everybody had a list of people to call, and we just called all these people. And it was funny because some were dead or had moved away, or you got the weirdest stories. But it helped to get all these shares in, and we're still not in jail, so it worked out fine.
Fantastic.